my computer was having an issue this morning. I was like, don't touch anything. My seal keeps disappearing.
No, we see it. We see it.
I only see its tail.
Yeah, because your camera is
Ah, right.
oh my God, we're live.
There.
Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. A very special show today at a very special time. Two authors discussing issues around homelessness today. They have tackled, both these authors have tackled this issue in their literary offerings as well as in real life in terms of hands on activism. We have Meg Mundell here coming to us from Melbourne, Australia. And the problem is that Meg is a wonderful mermaid who cannot hear us. She is hard of hearing, and we hope that we hope that she can participate in text with us. So if the camera could show this wonderful Meg can hear us, but she cannot speak. Wonderful. So Meg, I can see your text as well as the local SL audience can see your text. So please feel free to comment, and I will relate this to the audience. So this is Meg Mundell, and then next to Meg, the mermaid, we have Ivy Pochoda. Hello, Ivy.
Hey there.
Ivy is entering the metaverse from Los Angeles, California. We are underwater today. A set built as per usual by Ruby. There's no special reason other than, and I thought about this in the preparation of the show. So we're talking about homelessness and social issues. Maybe we're underwater because we are underwater as a society in terms of drowning in these issues. But that's a little bit maybe too corny. And in my defense, I say I'm German and we don't have a sense of humor. But let's get started here. And I apologize, we're really late in starting today, but we will make up for it. As I said, both authors here are very prolific. Their books are on the table. So if the camera could zoom into the table here, we will mainly talk about Ivy's book These Women, which is kind of literary crime, but with a very real setting with it's there is suspenseful stuff happening on top of, but the layers beneath are uh important, and they resonate, and it's not just like a whodunit kind of thing. Meg's book We Are Here, she edited this book, and this has stories of people who experienced homelessness. um Now we have two wonderful avatars. We have a Selkie, we have a mermaid. Question to both of you. Meg, you can type this, but Ivy, real quick, why did you choose a Selkie as your avatar when I first approached you doing this program?
Well, my
What's the
6-year-old,
deal?
I know, right? My 6-year-old daughter is obsessed with seals, and we spent a lot of time talking about seals. When I was pregnant, I was snorkeling in the Sea of Cortez in Mexico, and a baby sea lion bit my flipper. And yeah, I just have we just it's something we bond over. I've got a seal obsession. I think like seals are underrepresented in the animal world, and
Yes.
selkies are awesome. They're like the original mermaids. Like they are, women who are women on land and seals in the water. It's cool. Like they're like seals aren't particularly sexy or whatever, so it's like kind of an interesting combination. Um,
I had
I
no idea
like
what a Selkie was actually in the beginning. Then I was Googling it, and
they're
yeah.
creepy.
Yeah. Does that
Yeah.
represent a side of you? Are you creepy?
Oh gosh. My friend Louisa and I always say that we're super creepy. but no, not really. I mean, I really like seals. They're ridiculous. That's my pet seal over there is really cute. I just think they're just an awesome animal, and I kind of like any sort of mythological creature that can transform and not be one thing or the other.
Right. I
Yeah.
think it's I think it's awesome, and I'm always really curious what kind of and what's the impulse to embody in when you have the choice to be whoever you want to be, and
You will,
what that is, and
well, it's
it's
cool because
sometimes
a
yeah,
Selkie can be two things. You could be human, seal, it's like you have an avatar that's actually like
right.
mutable, which is kind of cool.
And you're also, I don't know why I don't have a snorkel, but anyway, so Meg, please chime in with your text. And here's Meg says, I chose a mermaid because of my last novel, The Trespassers. It's set almost entirely at sea. P.S. Ivy Aselki gets mentioned by the main character in my novel. That's correct. And Meg was here actually with The Trespassers, an amazing novel. It's also here on the table, by the way. And yes, there is a Selkie gets mentioned. So this is very what is this? Is this a coincidence? Is this serendipity? Is this some sort of fate? Who knows what's happening? But we got to focus here. I'm reminding myself um, of the topic at hand, and I prepared something that the audience enjoys, which is a little role play. And because we can't hear Meg, I will basically role play her part. Now, I would like to do the following. I just brought up a little bookstore display in the background. I'm going to pretend that I am a customer and I'm coming in, and Ivy is the bookseller. And I will ask Ivy if she has anything to recommend for me that addresses the issues of homelessness or the unhoused. Actually, let me ask you before we do this, Ivy, what's the terminology here? Is there a correct terminology, or is there even a consensus in terms of terminology? We talk homeless, we talk unhoused. Um, wh-
Yeah. I think it's influx. I mean, you know, undomiciled is one complicated way to say it.
hmm,
Homeless, I work in Skid Row, and people do say homeless issues, but I think it isn't as strict as, Black and African American and, questions of like Native American, Indigenous, because homeless is a term that is used by like activists in the community. A lot of people are saying undomiciled now, but that's a complicated word,
mhm,
unhoused, alternatively housed. So I don't think homeless is a terrible thing to say, but I also think that like one of the problems with the word is that a lot of people who are homeless in an overall like are also have a roof over their head, so it's not entirely
mhm.
correct. And I think that's a
Oh, I
problem.
see. That's where it comes from. So basically, because
Yeah.
they live in a car or couch surfing or whatever, people go like, yeah, what's the problem? You're not really homeless. You're not out there in the
Right.
rain.
Meg saying in the chat here in Australia, the term people experiencing homelessness is a mouthful, but that's the official preferred term. Reason is that homelessness is a situation, not an identity. Yeah, so
Ah,
that's right. But, I don't think, I think one of the issues here is that there's many gradations of homelessness. From people who live on the street to people who live in shelters to people who live in Section 8 housing, and it's a catch-all phrase that's not nuanced enough, but it's not derogatory. Exactly. Yeah.
that is really interesting, and we live in such strange times where where there is a certain we need to be aware of things, but there's also a certain pedantry and a certain glee in quote unquote canceling people if they just make one tiny mistake as they're learning to deal with an issue that and we often I feel paint with a very broad brush and throw bad actors into the same sort of pot as people who are really curious and could be brought to to the good side but are not well versed in these things, right? And it's sometimes
Yeah.
difficult to yeah. Actually, I'm going to bring down the book thing again first, and to set the scene I do want to bring up this slide just to give people a visual of what's happening here. This is a slide that co-producer Shyla prepared, a collage of homelessness in Melbourne. Is where Meg is from. Where Meg is right. Well, she's not from there, but she's there right now. World's most livable city, Melbourne likes to call itself. I don't know where that came from. Meg, please contextualize if that's sort of an official branding by the Tourism Bureau. These are just some images from Melbourne that we see right now. And here is a collage of Skid Row in downtown LA area where Ivy also works with an organization, Studio 526, where she teaches writing. Here is Skid Row, and you see this here as well in LA. There's other areas, as I imagine, Melbourne as well. In LA, also on Venice Beach, there's a huge issue. Um, yeah, those are just some visual impressions. Now let me go into my bookstore, and we'll bring
Okay.
this up again later, these slides, but this is something, if you haven't seen this or if you ignore it, I don't know how you can. But here's the bookstore. Now I'm coming in here.
I'm trying to get there.
Oh, no, no, you can stand where you are. That's okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Your poor seal. No, no, this is good. This is good. Yeah,
Poor
like
Seal.
hello, hello, Mrs. Bookseller, or Miss Bookseller. I'm very interested in the issue of homelessness, um, specifically in Australia. Can you recommend anything to me in that regard?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very specific topic that you're interested in, and I don't think a lot of people think about homelessness outside the United States and India and stuff. But so and third world countries. But there's a very good book about homelessness in Melbourne, which is actually a collection of essays and poems and lived experiences called "We Are Here." Does that sound like something you'd want to read?
That
It's
sounds
just,
really interesting. I
yeah,
think I know the author. I read another book of hers,
yeah,
Meg Mundell. Is it true
that's
that the
exactly right.
but the We Are Here is actually written not by her, but it's written by people who have experienced homelessness. Is that
It
right?
it is, yeah, it is, and it's really interesting because it's a book that sort of would take you by surprise because many people probably think that people who are unhoused can't write or don't have the education to write. But this book sort of reframes and recontextualizes homelessness as something that can happen to everybody or anybody. We're all one step away from, being homeless ourselves. And the stories in here are very, very dynamic and different. They're profound and they're really well written. So I think, it's going to take you by surprise a little bit because it's not going to be sort of all the hard luck stories you imagine.
Does it also address through these stories the various reasons why people become homeless? Is that something that is being discussed a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. It does implicitly and explicitly, because of just the wide range of people who are represented in the various stories. I mean, stories is the wrong word. I guess they're essays and, personal memoirs and narratives. But yeah, it addresses reasons for someone becoming someone living on the streets or living from place to place or living untraditionally, both by explaining why, but also just sort of showing what sort of people who are not entirely the people you'd always imagine who become homeless. So it's a really great. It's also sort of one of these books that is powerful because I think you'll like it because we think of homelessness as uniquely and unilaterally depressing or a sad thing, which it is in context. But there's also joy to be found in resilience and
Hmm.
in the people who are surviving difficult circumstances.
Hmm. It's interesting. I hear this weird voice in my head right now that says the book also includes work by award-winning novelists, journalists, playwrights, academics, teachers, a personal trainer, an ex-soldier, a psychotherapist, all people who have been homeless. I don't know, Mrs. Bookseller, I sometimes hear these voices in my head. I don't know if that's a
I don't
pathology or
know.
not. Yeah,
Weird.
but it sounds really interesting. So I will purchase this and thank you very much for this
Of
great,
course.
yeah. cut. This was great. Okay.
Oops.
Wonderful. Now, Ivy, because
Oops.
we cannot hear Meg, we have to do the following now.
Yeah.
We're going to a
Trying
reverse.
to.
I'm
Whoops.
gonna
My seal and I are going away here. Okay.
hold on. No. You have to come back here because now what's gonna
Oh.
happen? You are the
Oh.
book
Okay.
the customer. You
Oh
come in the
boy.
store and
Okay.
I am the bookseller and I'm gonna sell you your own book. You have to come in and say, interested in a crime novel, but it has to be of a certain. That's the only prompt I'm gonna give you. You can
Okay.
take it where you will. So, but
Okay.
you have to
Okay.
say like,
Okay.
just come in and say, "Hi, I'm a
Okay.
kind of a snob. I need
Sure.
good writing, but I also need good plot. What can you recommend?" Okay. Before we do this,
Ready?
let me go through some of the comments here in the chat. Some really good comments here. Elisa said, one thing that I have heard over and over is people who claim to be homeless do so with a roof over their head, but it is not a home, and the comfort we all feel at home. Yes, we'll go a little deeper into that as well. This is what you guys were already mentioning in terms of this terminology. Bloodfang says there are plenty of vets that have dropped out of society. Shiloh says, sometimes I have heard the adjective of transient applied to the homeless. Um, Also great mention here, and we'll pick this up a little bit later. Um, Shiloh says, it sounds like the bookseller is suggesting to be homeless is not necessarily a break with reality. Well, why? I mean, my question would why would it be? I mean, we don't.
Well, I mean, what the bookseller would like to interject here and say,
You're still the
what
bookseller. Yeah, go ahead.
the former bookseller would like to interject and say whether or not it's the person who's experiencing homelessness, extreme poverty, or difficult circumstances, whether that's is his or her choice to break with reality.
Mhm.
Society's choice is to force a break with reality because of these incremental steps away from being able steps back from being able to participate in society. Like when you, at least in America, when you don't have an address, then you can't vote. When you can't, then you can't apply for certain, it's all paperwork. And like the more aware, like in order to survive as a person experiencing like homelessness or lack of you know traditional housing, you become divorced from reality because the way our society is structured forces you not to be able to do the things that are necessary to participate in society in the way that America mandates that you do. So, like, whether or not you are, even if you're mentally capable of participating in society, which unfortunately a huge majority of homeless people aren't, we have a structure here where that reality break is forced upon you.
Ah, this makes total sense to me. One other quick comment here, Tanya, and please keep this question in mind and post it later. I work sometimes in a shelter we had during the hot summer weeks. Lots to do to supply additional liquids to them. I'm assuming homeless population. Actually, Meg here also says she doesn't like the homeless because it otherizes people further. But Tanya, this is a good question because she's asking, is that part of the situation in general? Or I guess the solution at the end of the show, I want to talk about like what can we actually do in everyday life because I also I talk with homeless people almost on a daily basis, have sometimes long conversations when I walk with the dog. And there's an incredible increase here in the park, live close by, and the usual stuff comes on these conversations. There are shelters available, but there's violence in the shelters, there's theft, there's not enough supervision. And so yeah, at the very end, I would like to have our guests maybe provide some maybe things that we can do. But for now, the former bookseller, please, is has now turned into a customer, and I have turned magically into a bookseller. So hello, customer.
Hi
How are you?
there.
Hello.
Hello, bookseller. I am looking for a serial killer novel
Ooh.
that doesn't really have a serial killer in it. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, the question, yeah, this is, I have great recommendations, but first of all, does language matter to you? Does like the ability to write good prose, does that matter to you at all?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Ah, you're a little
there's
bit of an elitist, I could tell. Mhm, mhm.
No, I just
No
think,
offense.
yeah, definitely an elitist. I'm gonna admit it. If it's
Well,
badly
I mean,
written, I'm not gonna read it.
I think I have something great for the little snob in all of us, and I say this with good cheer because we only have very limited time. So we want good plot and we want suspense, but we also want quality writing and deep characters and just good prose. And a really great writer, Ivy Pochoda. I don't know if you heard of her. She was a former squash player. I don't know what that
Oh,
is. I'm not really into sports.
what
Uh,
an interesting combination.
interesting career transition. But her latest book is called These Women, and it is basically a book about that takes place in South LA in the neighborhood known as Jefferson Park, and then also so that the area of Heights. There's a bunch of Heights. In the
Mhm.
back of the book, it says West Adams. I don't know if you're not familiar with LA. It doesn't matter. But this is a book about women who are some of them are sex workers. Some of them are, I guess, exotic dancers might be a term, um, and they get killed, and the local police department really does absolutely nothing. And there is a white woman who lives in a predominantly black and Latino neighborhood, and this white woman runs a little fish shack, and her daughter of mixed race because she was married to a black guy was murdered, and she feels that that was strange by this serial killer because her daughter did not fill the profile, and it unfolds from there, and you get a glimpse into a wonderful mixed neighborhood. There is the topic of gentrification is always sort of lurking around, but you see tremendous violence that women who work on this outside of the quote unquote normal work, people, women who are on the streets, what kind of violence they're being exposed to on a day-to-day basis, um, and the callousness of the men in this story, and the dismissal and the cruelty of the men is should give everyone pause. So it's a great book. It gives a lot of food for thought. Is that something maybe that you
Wow.
might find interesting?
I wonder how someone could have written such a book. It sounds fascinating. Um,
Don't know.
yeah,
Maybe that
totally.
person is a serial killer herself. I don't
I
know.
know. I kind of, yeah. I wonder how she learned so much about prostitutes. And if
Oh,
anyone's ever asked her that. Yeah. No, that sounds
yeah. We
perfect.
should
It
really
sounds
have this
exactly like
author.
I want.
I
Yeah.
I would love to have this author on a talk show and ask her if how she knows so much about the trade. One thing that I really love about this book as well, because it has these different perspectives of young people, and one young person where you feel she could have had a ticket out of this depressing neighborhood. She gets drawn into sex work and exploitation. I'm not making a judgment on sex work here, but she is being exploited, and she could have had a way out through art, but she's not, for whatever the reason, she's not pursuing it. And those are questions that are not easy to answer, and the author, Ivy Pochoda, is not
Mm,
giving an easy answer like, why don't you just, you know, uh, pull yourself together and pursue an art career? Why do you want to, why are you giving hand jobs in the back room of this seedy bar?
well.
So right, so it's a complicated answer. It's not that easy, like, it's all a matter of personal responsibility or whatnot. So that's really great about this book, I think.
Well, let me get a copy. Maybe I'll get two.
Yeah, just get to. Also, I hear a voice in my head. It's an Australian voice that says, "These Women is an amazing book." And then that voice
Hmm.
says, "It's a deeply felt and very human book, but it's also a wild ride." Interesting. That Australian voice in my head seems like she is very adept in writing succinct blurbs. Uh,
She's really selling this book to me.
Yeah, it's actually a
That
Kiwi
was
voice. Sorry, I really can't tell accents apart these days. So
well, thanks. Yeah, I'll totally
yeah,
take that.
Cut. Okay, that was good. Thank you very much. Can
Yeah,
we get a round of
totally.
applause for our wonderful actors here and not me? Get a nod of I don't know, feeling sorry for Draxter, who is now sad that he has to do these goofy things. But I think they're not really that goofy. But let me ask you, Ivy, how do you know so much about this neighborhood that you write about here and these women, and especially that kind of these kind of activities?
Um, well, for various reasons. One of them is that I live in this neighborhood. I live where I write. I live a few blocks from Western Avenue, which is where a lot of the book takes place. And there's a lot of prostitution out there, and you see it, and it's I don't find it particularly shocking. But yeah, it's sad because obviously the type of prostitution we have here is very gang and pimp controlled. I work in Skid Row. I've taught in Skid Row for creative writing for 8 years. And some of the participants in my workshop are sex workers. I didn't know that. I mean, it's not like something they talk about, but you figure it out
Right. You
over
don't go in
time.
there like, what do you do? And
No,
they don't
no,
volunteer that conversation necessarily. And
no.
as
I
you're
mean,
talking, let me just say on the back, I just brought up, if people are not familiar with LA, I brought up a little Google Maps here, and you can see the big yellow part from left to right is the 10 freeway that cuts through these neighborhoods. And then from north to south is Western Avenue, which is sort of the big line through. And that's what Ivy's talking about, this neighborhood. And I guess the prostitutes are along Western usually,
Western,
right?
yeah, they go from very far south to almost the northern part of Western Avenue.
Hmm.
So some of the people in my workshop are sex workers, and you find that out in various ways. Also, I lived in Amsterdam for 7 years, and so prostitution is legal there. I lived in one of my apartments was in a not in the red light district, but in another red light district in the a neighborhood called the Pipe. And so I rented an apartment from a former prostitute and her new husband, and there was red lights around the corner. So it was just sort of like an everyday thing to be around sex workers in the neighborhood. And I had friends who were former sex workers. So it was kind of normalized. Like, so you realize that, like, that's a job, and you're a person outside your job. But I felt very comfortable writing about it. It's not all that different from any other job. It's just we view it slightly differently.
If Meg has questions here for Ivy, because this is also a part of the program when I have two
Right.
authors on, I like the other author to ask, the other panelist, the question that they were dying to ask about their book. And here's another slide of the Santa Monica Freeway just cutting through this neighborhood. One of the amazing things I think that really work for your narrative is that all the protagonists walk on foot. Even the cop that is portrayed as is a woman that
I
pursues this,
know.
yeah, and she really puts everything together with the serial killer, which happens over the course of I think 15 or 17, no, 15 years, and she puts it all together here, and she walks. Uh, she walks the neighborhood. Here is a quote.
You could almost see my
Go ahead.
house in that map.
Oops, let me put the map back here.
Yeah, you
Wait a
could
minute, where
only
is
see
it?
my house, almost see my house.
Oh,
You
I
cut it off
lost
by
the map.
one block. It's okay. So,
I thought you live in
where it's
downtown.
no, no, no. I live on Oxford, so it's Western there, and then it's LA
Ah,
Tires and Wheels. And Oxford, if you just go up Oxford, and right where it cuts off is where I
unfortunately, I can't go up. This is a
live.
screenshot.
But it's literally where I live. Yeah, yeah.
Ah, okay. So you don't happen to live, if you're looking at the map, do you live in this house here? This is on Oxford, in this mustard colored house.
Yes, yeah.
Because
Oh, you're looking at my house.
are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
yeah, no, no, no. Okay, so that's not my house. That's around the corner. Okay, see the greenhouse? Okay, okay. How can I describe this? There's a green and red house in the foreground.
Oh boy, I've been stalking you on Google Maps.
Yeah, that green and red house in the foreground. My house is the house with the nicer roof behind it with the solar panels. There's like a palm tree, and then there's
Mhm.
that's my house. Yeah.
this is really interesting
Those are my
because
neighbors. Those my but oh my god, wait. Okay, this is bananas. That house that you took a picture of there, that is the house that technically Dorian lives in.
but that's why I bring it up because
Oh, that's her house. Oh, okay.
you're describing in the book Dorian,
That's her
the
house.
protagonist who owns the fish shack, and again
Yeah.
she's a white woman married to a black man
Hmm.
who passed away, and her daughter was murdered, and she is very, very active in the neighborhood. She feeds the sex workers, she gives them free food, which is frowned upon by some folks who feel like, if you feed them, they'll stick around. Don't feed them, and because then they will leave. And you're describing where her house was, and you say it's mustard colored. So I was looking
Yeah.
around on Google Maps,
That's it.
and I found this house. And the alternative house actually is this one, but this one is on Cambridge. I'm bringing up the
They're both in
slide right
Cambridge.
now.
Oh,
So
they're across from each other.
yeah, so this is not the house, right? I mean, this is not really
No, no,
mustard
it was
colored.
the other house. No, it's the other house. And my house is right. You can see the roof of my house right behind that.
For people who are not familiar with this area, again, this is really a historic area with some really beautiful houses. And I know there's a lot of comments here in the chat. I'll get to them in a second. Here is just a collage of different places from Jefferson Park, and in the middle there is a photograph of Tony Harper, the jazz legend, as she's walking her dog on
Wow.
rollerblades in 1904. She's born 1937, so this is the mid 40s. Um, uh, this is a very diverse neighborhood
Hmm.
that is also being gentrified. Now, let me ask you a question that I have in the run sheet actually for later. Um, are you a gentrifier?
Ooh, yeah. I mean,
Are
it's
we
tricky.
all gentrifiers, Ivy?
It's gentrifying. It, like my friends who live in rough cities in LA, in America, will say gentrification is a problem they would like to have. My friends who live in like Allentown or Coal Country and teach university there. Yeah, I have to say, in this case, in this neighborhood, I am a gentrifier, but I'm from Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn. Um, and my mom has lived in the same house for nearly 44 years. We moved there in the 70s. Um, that neighborhood has gentrified like extraordinarily. I mean, you might have read the Fortress of Solitude. It's set in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
um, so it's tricky. In New York, I am not a gentrifier, although I am of the same class that I am now, the same skin color. Because that here in LA, I am. I make the joke, if you want your neighborhood to gentrify, have me write a book about it. I'm 3 for 3. Visitation Street, Wonder Valley, and these women are all about gentrification. Um, Gentrification is not entirely a bad thing. It can be a really good
That will
thing.
be
It
my
can,
follow-up question because
yeah,
it could be if, and while I was doing research, there is actually, I think Jefferson Park has a neighborhood council that is inviting people to discuss things like that. So there's a lot of sort of
yes.
civic initiatives in these neighborhoods.
I am on the I was that was the genesis of these women. Was I was on that neighborhood council. I actually live in a neighborhood called Harvard Heights, which is adjacent to Jefferson Park, but we are in the neighborhood council with Jefferson Park, and it has the worst name. It's called the United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, which makes me
Ah,
crazy to hear it. But it is anyone on the neighborhood council is interested in the neighborhood, and that's one type of gentrification. But a lot of gentrification ignores the neighborhood that already exists and just drops wealth on top of it.
hmm.
So, like it should be to support the existing community, but sometimes with really bad gentrification, and this is what the Jefferson Park Neighborhood Council, United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, fights against, is we can't have a lot of $8 coffee shops because the original homeowners here can't afford that. So we need to
Hmm.
make sure that the stuff that's coming in is stuff that is actually, positive for the community. But there's another side to that. My neighborhood is what we call it, a food desert. Like we don't have healthy grocery stores, we don't have healthy food options. So you have to find a way to bring in things that are affordable but also helpful, and it's very tricky. So there's a lot. Anything that has to be built in West Adams, in this area, does have to pass through the neighborhood council if it's a big development, and the neighborhood council can actually weigh in and change it. for the most part. So like when I was in the council, someone wants to open a restaurant and they want it to be able to 2 a.m., but we can look at the menu and see, what the price point is, whether this is going to be something that the local community can use. I mean, we can't say yes or no ultimately, but we can make it really hard for them.
This is something that is really interesting because, as you're saying, it's hard. I mean, one of the reasons why this is hard is that big chains and sort of flush franchises come with a lot of,
Hmm.
promises and perks, and they can plug down a lot of cash, and especially in California, it's important. To have these property taxes where a lot of stuff is tied into
Absolutely.
it. But I don't want to get too local because we also
I
have
know.
Meg here. No, no, this is really awesome, and there's so many good comments. Let me just go scrolling back here a little bit through the comments here about sex work. Where is it now? Meg was saying street-based sex work is especially dangerous. Stella is asking, wouldn't the occupation expose the sex worker to greater levels of violence compared to other occupations? Well, yeah, but also the way it's being controlled. I mean, these are not entrepreneurs, these are not freelancers. These are women that are controlled by, as you said, Ivy, pimps who are maybe affiliated with a gang, right? I mean, there's no
Yeah.
such thing as an independent sex worker in your neighborhood.
No, it's very dangerous to be an independent sex worker in this neighborhood, because you'll be, harassed or hurt by other sex workers, pimps. What often the sex workers in this neighborhood are, they're called circuit girls, and they are on a rotation, so they'll be dropped off on Western, and then move somewhere else by the people controlling them. You don't technically see the same people all the time. Down in Skid Row, it's different, because there are like sort of more set up like prostitution tents, and that's very stable. I mean, in so much as anything is stable, but in Western, it's people are circulated in and out. It makes it harder to entrap them, and there's a whole reason for it. Yeah.
Mm. Now I wanna change course real quick, and I want to ask Meg if you can. The Meg was scheduled to read here, and I don't have. If you can cut and paste the text of your reads into the local chat, then I can read it. And in the meantime, if the camera, because I also prepared three different excerpts that I found striking from your book. Your book has We Are Here has different chapters, and they touch on different issues. The chapters are called Home Truths, City Streets, Cast Adrift, and Belonging. And if the camera could now zoom to behind our audience, there are three easels, and they have excerpts, very, very brief excerpts of some of the text with the bio blurb of the person who wrote it. So let's go to the first one. The first one is called the story is called Chambers of the Heart. This, I think, is the first story in the book. It's by Gregory P. Smith. And let me just read this while the camera is zooming on it. This is the story. Here's how it starts. Home is where the heart is. The words roll off the tongue easily enough. I've heard them spoken many times over the years, but as a long-term homeless man, I never really knew what to make of them. For most of my life, I'd considered the notion that a home might resemble a heart as pure nonsense, espoused by people who'd never had to think too hard about it, people who hadn't like a lived a life like mine. And this is written by Dr. Gregory P. Smith. I'm going to read the bio blurb. He was born in 1955 and surrendered to an orphanage in 1966. He was considered a problem child, diagnosed as a sociopath with mid-range intelligence, and was in and out of institutions until 1974. Searching in vain for the skills to live a fruitful and rewarding life, he became increasingly disillusioned with society and lived as a recluse in a, what does NSW stand for again, my Australian friends?
New South Wales.
New South Wales, yeah, New South Wales rainforest. In 2000, he decided to give society one more chance This is really beautiful phrasing. The folks write their own bios here. I love that. He decided to give society one more chance and walked out of the forest and began to explore life from a different perspective. In 2007, he gained a first-class honors degree in social science, and in 2015, he completed his PhD. Awesome. And so Meg is cut and pasting her excerpts here, which is wonderful. Let me go to the second easel here. There's also a very brief excerpt by L. Hammond Lewis. This one's called Fleeing, Running, Burning. This is another reason, again, we are here, explores different reasons for why people end up in the situations, or not end up, but they are in the situations they're in. Fleeing, burning, running. I've always been told to be quiet by my friend in school who punched me in the stomach in my backyard near the paneled wooden fence that always gave us splinters. Don't you tell your mom. By my high school friend who threw my favorite toy in my face hard and at close range so it left a bruise. When the fighting gets bad at home between my parents, my father beats my mother as she huddles on the floor. I see his fist rise up and slam down with a force I've never seen used on any other human being. My siblings, all male, tell me, shut the F up. I don't care about your effing family history, about our family history. Stop saying that shit or else. I watch as the only other woman in my life makes herself smaller and smaller, giggling nervously to fill silences, withdrawing more and more from life and from me. This is L. Hammond Lewis, an artist, teacher living in Victoria. They have completed a visual arts degree at the University of Melbourne and exhibited their work both nationally and internationally. One day, Elle hopes to write a book, but between art making and gardening, it's very hard to find the time. So this is obviously another reason why people uh, become homeless or unhoused is because of domestic violence. Uh, this is also something that is obviously affecting young folks, children often, and it's something we need to really always, I think, keep in mind when we talk about sort of, whatever it is, that whole personal responsibility garbage. Um, Real quick, Night Blindness, the third easel here. Please, camera, could you zoom on it? Thank you. By Liz Jett. I hadn't eaten or slept for days. I was staying in a rooming house in Mount Martha with nowhere to call home. I thought the new area might be a fresh start for me. Instead, I was having a nervous breakdown. I had no friends, no mobile phone reception, no TV. The radio had become my friend. All night I listened to it, and the rhythm of the songs kept me alive. The man in the next room was stalking me. Instinct told me he was very dangerous. Whenever I left my room, he followed. So I stayed in my room, which meant he stayed in his. He could hear me pee, and I could hear him talking to women on the TV, calling them sluts. Liz Jett grew up in country New South Wales in a single parent family that moved around a lot. She has worked in retail, aged care, and local government, and has a decade of experience as a sex worker. After escaping a violent marriage, she gained tertiary qualifications in social work. Now in her early 50s, she's a mother activist and educator. Again, we talked about this, the violence against women, which is the topic of your book, of course, Ivy. And now I'm going to just bring up the bios of the excerpts that Ivy put in to the local, sorry, Meg put in the local chat. These are additional things, but yeah, Ivy, go ahead if you have any thoughts that you want to
Yeah,
contribute
I
here.
actually did. I really enjoyed We Are Here. But I was sort of taken aback, like when I started working in Skid Row, um, obviously I lived adjacent to Skid Row, and I walk through it all the time because I walk a lot in LA, and I just was shocked that when I got to the studio where I work, how the people who were there were not exactly what you imagine. Like, we all have this very conventional view of homelessness, and like it's like the pictures that Drax showed at the
Right.
beginning, like people intense on the, like, how could these people write, and I got there and I was, very much had to be re-educated that about the different types of people who become homeless, and some are very educated and some are, not. But I couldn't imagine. And I run a zine, Skid Row zine, or I don't run it. I facilitate a zine where we like amplify the voices of Skid Row poetry and show the joy as opposed to the sort of desperation. But we are here. The writers are profoundly um, literate and
Mhm.
profoundly well spoken. And I was sort of taken aback. Like that's a step even further that when I had to reawaken my own conception of homelessness here, like I could never have produced from all the people I know in the 8 years of teaching, even a third of the writing style here. And I wonder if it has something to do with the huge sense of income inequality in America that like
Mm.
people are not educated here and there's so much mental illness and so much of that leads to homelessness. Like although I have fully educated people, I was absolutely stunned by how profoundly how deep the writing was and how uh thorough and how clean, because this was my
Yeah.
dream, was to get my group to do this, but there's no way.
This is a really interesting point, and maybe Meg, let's give Meg some time. Please,
Yeah,
Meg, address this in chat because I had similar
yeah,
thoughts, and I think you're onto something here, Ivy, because I know both. I know the German world and I know the American world, and I think because of slightly better free educational system in Germany. I mean, it's being dismantled as we speak, but there's probably a higher level of, generally speaking, among the general population, sort of like basic s- skills, I guess, that you can sort of get for free early on with that sort of universal
yeah.
education. Again, I mean, there's tons of holes in it. I'm not trying to, paint a rosy picture here at all, but let's see what Meg has to
Meg's
say.
saying I ran writing workshops for 18 people over 3 months. I mean, I've run my workshop for 8 years with some of the same people. And one of my students is two of them are absolutely terrific writers, and yes, could have produced this quality of writing. Um, but I guess another issue that we have is immigration, and a lot of the people I see in Skid Row are not native English speakers, have been coming from like Central America, from war-torn countries, didn't get educated there or here because of circumstance. It's just very, very different. I did my writing workshop today, and we did it on Zoom. So
Do
it's
people
just
even
very.
have access? I mean, how does that work? That's interesting,
How
because
does it work?
this is something that really bugs me. And as
Uh,
enthusiastic I am about virtual worlds and the technology, I sometimes I clash a little bit with the Silicon Valley optimists because they're all like, "Oh, technology will save us all," and go like, guys, I know that Second Life, for example, as a specific example, has enormous possibilities as sort of an inclusive place, and people have avatars and they can sort of transcend and be their essence, blah blah blah. But you got to plug down a lot of cash for good broadband and a good machine. That's like, I mean, when you're saying like you do Zoom, I mean, we've seen it in Germany with like middle class parents, um that their own kids didn't have machines to do remote stuff for school even. So how do you
so the
do
way
this with
uh,
your
Oh
folks? Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, so a lot of my a lot of the participants in the workshop have become housed through a program called Section 8, where there's a bunch of houses in LA that are available for a very, very reduced rate. And it's a total nightmare to get one. But after many years, some of the workshop participants are in Section 8 housing, and they have some kind of Wi-Fi setup. But
Hmm.
I can't go to the studio, but studio participants can. So I Zoom into the studio. So there are people
Hmm.
there. And also with Zoom, you can connect over your phone. So if you don't necessarily have a computer, you can dial into the Zoom. So they do it over just audio.
Dang, dang, this whole
Yeah.
Second Life
But
underwater
like,
Stalky thing that could be so healing is just, it's just too luxurious for the general. No, I
but
know. I mean, yeah.
Like Meg was suggesting in her chat here that these kind of projects do sort of self-select for a certain more like a certain level of homeless or formerly homeless person who is able to participate. So you're not, again, like when you see pictures of homelessness and you see people who are having severe bouts of like a mental illness or drug
Hmm.
addiction, the people in my workshop could have been that way in the past, but when they step into the workshop, they have at least taken a step beyond that. They might still live on the street, they might still use drugs, but they are able to show up and write, which
Hmm.
makes their sort of participation one aspect. You know, you're not seeing everything there. So.
Let me bring up a slide here because your place that you teach out of is called Studio 526, and it's part of
Mhm.
the.
Oh my
I forgot.
God! That guy. Yeah, he's one of my favorite writers.
Yeah, he's from the website.
Ramon Fuentes. Yeah,
Ramon Puentes. There we go.
Fuentes. Yeah, that's him, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
he's great. He
let me
wrote a
take a
really great.
picture
I
here
have one
so
of
he
his
can send
stories.
it to
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
So let me read this real quick, and then I have you comment. But this is from the website. Our focus is on increasing accessibility to community art spaces for people who are experiencing homelessness or in extremely low income poverty, and a commitment to being a safe space for people who are living with mental illness. The studio encourages long-term participation as artists develop their individual voices, display their artwork, inspire each other, build community together, and make creativity a continuous restorative part of their lives. This is so awesome, Ivy. I'm in awe. I wanna leave everything behind and join you there and teach them music or whatever I can offer, or video editing or whatnot. This is really,
Love it.
honestly, I'm very impressed by your work there. But I have to ask you this because in these women, there is you're touching on something that I think has to do with this as well. Julia, Juliana, in your book, sorry, Mariella, I'm sorry. She is an artist. She can express herself. She has an exhibit, and she takes pictures of that she finds on a phone,
Mhm.
of images of violence and of sexual violence, sexual encounter, and such. And there's a very interesting quote here that I picked out, where she is sort of her in, interior monologue. She's talking about her perception of her own work. Here she says, last night, alone with her work, Morella felt nothing but courage and pride. Again, she's exhibiting images of violence, of sexual violence and other types of violence. The images were powerful, made her feel powerful and in control, but now she sees dead women because some of the people who are pictured in these photos are dead now. She sees desperation. She sees they were doomed. And what's worse, she turned herself into a victim, filmed herself being chased down the streets. She thought that by turning her fear into art, she'd master it and get the jump on it. But she's not in control, not now and not when she was making and creating. So the question that came to my mind, Ivy, because I'm also a proponent, I always say, like, express yourself through writing and music or whatever, it will heal you. But is that really true? Can it not also re-traumatize?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It can re-traumatize. It's an interesting question. That is the thing I think about all the time in my workshop, which is like, I am not a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am not an art therapist. I am there to write we write completely outside the experience of, homelessness, poverty, mental illness. I do sort of lighter stuff. And yeah, I think it can re-traumatize people, but the
I mean, in
decision
this
to
particular,
engage.
sorry to jump in here. I mean, in the
Yeah.
particular thing here in your book, Morella, of course,
Yeah.
she chooses to use a really tough subject matter to actually also provoke something in the viewer that goes to this gallery and sees these pictures from their neighborhood, the poverty, the violence, and
Mhm.
she wants them to start sort of a thinking process. I mean, this is what art should be doing. Art should not comfort. Art should be uh, provoking us to maybe ask questions. But you are teaching these marginalized folks to write, to express themselves. I guess that's the
Right.
question.
Well, I mean, one of the things when you are marginalized is you don't have a lot, but you have your story and you have your creativity. And that's the thing that no one can take away from you and that no one should try to make their own. And Morella makes the horrible decision of taking someone else's work and making it her own because she cannot express. So Morella is sort of, I mean, this is not exactly what you asked me, but Morella is in a way exhibiting my worst fear, which is
Hmm.
taking advantage of marginalized communities for my own art. And like, it's
Right.
very tricky to write about Skid Row because like, that the only thing that belongs to someone who may live in a tent is their story and their personal experience. They might not
Yep.
have anything else. So I want to make sure that I am not doing that. Morella doesn't, and she does the worst thing she could possibly do, which I can't say because it gives away the story. But she's also a terrible artist in my mind. She's this awful performance artist. It's all concept and no emotion. Um, because there's something in her that's traumatized and she doesn't know how to deal with it.
Hmm.
And so she's like working around that. But yeah, I think that if you're willing to work on the thing that scares you, it's not going to re-traumatize you, but it might take a while for you to understand why you're doing that. So
This is really interesting. Morella, yes, we cannot give away why she does it, but essentially she does what some white music producers have done with
mhm.
black music, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, interesting also that she has the opportunity to get exhibited, to have
Hmm.
this exposure in
Yeah.
a nice setting, and the other person, Juliana, in your book, does not. She just does not have
Yeah.
these opportunities. Although arguably, again, I can see somebody go like, why don't she just pull herself up by her bootstraps, and she could have the same opportunity. She's
Because
just
she's
sort of lazy.
Latina and she's not lazy. She just like art
Well,
is
I
the
can
privilege
tell
of
you,
the
I
upper
met a
middle class. Like,
app.
in her world, art is the privilege of the upper middle class.
Yep.
And like she does not have any of the like tools to understand, like she doesn't understand why a famous photographer like Larry Sultan can take pictures of like porn sets and that's art, and what the difference, but she's naive enough not to see the difference between why that his work is acceptable but why her snaps of her prostitution life are not art, although I think they are. But she just can't like it is very vain to want to be an artist, and it's very, you have to have a lot of confidence, and a lot of Latina women don't have that confidence, especially in America. It's a very difficult. We have a horribly stratified society where like
Yeah.
art is not an option for the not for
Yeah, and
someone
if you're
not in the
not
upper middle class.
exactly, and if you don't see it in
Yeah.
your home, I just want to throw in this little anecdote because I completely agree with you. A while ago, in a different virtual world project, Sansar, which was with headsets and all gobbledygook, I encountered an older black man who was very nice, and we had great conversations. And then we had a roundtable discussion, and homelessness came up, and he said, "You know what? I was homeless. I was in Iraq. Then I was homeless and I lived on Skid Row. But you know what? I took
Hmm.
classes. I went to the library and I took classes, and then I taught myself HTML, and now I'm designing websites, and it was really interesting." And I said, dude, this is amazing. Your story is amazing, right? And
Hmm.
but he came out with this story, and you know where this is going, because then he said, yeah, and all the others they're just lazy. They could have done the same thing, but they choose to be on drugs and be lazy, and they had the opportunity to also go to the library and do the same thing. And then I was respectful because I didn't want to tell him, dude, you're like buying this whole like libertarian Ayn Rand type stuff.
Yeah.
uh I try to suggest that some people just maybe need a little bit more help if they're in the drug hole in there, and also people have different personalities, and not to devalue his go-getter attitude, but that it would be maybe a mistake to expect that from absolutely everybody in his situation, that they would all be able to do this. And he was just steadfastly saying, well, they just slept till they slept till 3, and then they got their fix, and he was up at 5 going to the library basically and studying
Hmm.
HTML. So he would just, his point, long story short, was, um, it's your own choice, and it's a waste of resources if we actually engage with people like that, because they're lost anyway. But he came from that same milieu. That was so frustrating to me.
um yeah, I think they're just, it's just
Do
like
you
such a
encounter
wide.
this sometimes when
uh
people are like, "Oh, this other dude, he's just too," I mean, that kind of sort of almost very sort of conservative mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I see that all the time. Like, why don't you just like clean? I mean, okay, so one of the things that is a problem with homelessness right now in Los Angeles is there are these sprawling tent communities all over the city. And for me, I don't tend to have a problem with that. People deserve to have a roof over their head, whether it's a canvas tarp or, whatever you've made it out of, and that's fine. But one of the major problems with these tent communities is that they can be very filthy, and they can have garbage and hoarding and like lots of things that are not really attractive there. And so people will say, well, why can't they just clean that up? That's just disgusting. You're like, well, you don't understand. Like, it's not just, there's a whole bunch of, it's not just someone is living on the street because they don't have their house. There's lots of compounding issues that go along with this. So I think that, like, you know, people are like, yeah, it's just disgusting. These tents are disgusting, and we can't have this in the city. And I think that's people can't see that it's not just a question of keeping your tent clean. There's a lot of mental illness and a lot of what's it called, self-doubt, and a lot of, it's just like,
Yeah, I mean,
yes,
these
that
issues
goes along with it.
absolutely, and Meg is just saying here, and she puts it in a nutshell. My rambling here: rich people can have mental illness and drug problems. People with strong family support around them can have both issues too. But if someone is poor and has no support, they're much more likely to become homeless. This is the thing: if you have a setup and if you have this sort of social network, it's much easier to go in and out of these problems. I mean, you teenager, you send them to rehab, and and then I don't know, send him to military school, and he's
Yeah,
fine.
I mean, our community is so broken, and I think one of the things that I deal with a little bit in the studio, although it's not my job in the slightest, is, so here's a story. Actually, it's a story by the guy whose picture you put up there, Ramon. He was he's lived in LA since the 80s, and he has some sort of disability, and he wanted to get a bus pass, and a free bus pass. But in order to get his, yeah, this guy, in order to get his bus pass, he had to go, like, file this paperwork and then show up and take a test to show that he was physically capable. He's not physically disabled, of swiping the bus pass, and that he wouldn't be disruptive on the bus. But in order to do that, he had to file this paperwork at this other place, and then he had to
Mm.
get this other, and he was just sitting there like, this is overwhelming. All I want is the free bus pass because I can't afford to ride the bus. And the hoops he had to jump through was like four different, official offices. And it's just like, at one point someone wrote in the chat, you just give up. You're like, well, I guess I'm
Yeah,
not going to ride the bus. I guess
it's
I'm not going to get a
designed.
house. I guess I'm not going to take a shower. Forget it. He got
There's
his
no,
bus pass,
yeah,
but
there's no question in my mind that this is to some extent designed to just wear people out.
yes,
And even if it's, this is not a conspiracy or anything, even if it's not, that's the net effect, and it's been going on for so long that if you were a really, an actor with good intentions, you would look at that and you would want to, anybody would want to reform this because it's just not working. Uh,
yeah,
Now, we're going obviously crazy over time, which is awesome, and I want to apologize again for me being slightly um, panicked in the beginning. This has is turning out to be a wonderful conversation, and actually, we're doing something that is wonderful because we're incorporating text also as well as voice here into the conversation. Let me go back here in the local chat and just mention a few things that folks are posting. Of course, Ivy is mentioning Ronald Reagan. I recommend Rick Perlstein's book, The Invisible Bridge, from Nixon to Reagan. Unbelievable. I think 1,000 pages or something, goes into enormous detail what happened really in the 80s to bring about, in the U.S. context, the mess that we're in right now. Shiloh is mentioning in the chat, I will say that the city I live in has been very helpful during these times of COVID, helping with food, rent, utilities. So homelessness might need more of a city approach. Yeah, like a local approach, I guess, above and beyond a family, says Shiloh. Shiloh, tell us your situation if you would. I mean, if you want to share it, please go ahead and put it in the chat. Meg says one guy I met had a brain injury and the cops kept finding him for minor things, like not having a train ticket. He had 14,000 in fines. I mean, this is just harassment on a incredible scale, just unbelievable. Meg is saying it's not uncommon, sadly. Once they get into the automated fine system, the fine just gets bigger and bigger. Oh, I see Kat Sparks is joining us here as well today. Hello, Kat, wonderful author. Um, Veteran of the book club. Not sure about your last comment here, Meg. Oh yeah, you're talking about the system and then getting trapped in the system of fines. I mean, that same is happening in the U.S. as well, and then you get thrown into jail, and then you have to basically you're accumulating more debt because you have to pay for your for your accommodations in jail. Shyla is asking a question. Isn't this related to the new law that they're trying to pass, or did they pass in Melbourne? Uh, Great question. I'm not familiar with this issue. Meg, please do comment. And I would say now we need to hear a little bit of Ivy reading because I'm talking too much. I've been told by the producer in my ear. And
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 I
Ivy
just
is
put
reading.
in a
Yes.
few things I just put
Yeah.
something
Go
in the
ahead.
chat. There's a really great book by Jeffrey Charlotte, which I want to shout out here, which is called This Brilliant Darkness. I think I might have written This Beautiful Darkness. And it's really about marginalized communities and Skid Row. It's a collection of essays and meditations, and it is phenomenal.
And also skidrowzine.org is the website where I guess you publish the writings of you
Some
and
of
your
them, yeah.
students, right? Very
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm reposting this again. Cayenne says love Jeff Charlotte. Cayenne is
Oh, great.
yeah, she's
He's the
familiar.
best. Good.
Um, so let's have you read. Please, Ivy, if you could stand up, and magically, what will happen is a book stand will appear in front of you, and then I will arrange it. Here it is. Look at this beautiful book stand here. It's made of slightly varnished wood that
Oh,
is
wait, where'd it
slightly
go?
transparent. It's right
Am
here
I
in
in the
front
wrong
of you.
place?
No, no, you're in a good place. You're in a good
Oh,
place.
I can't see it. Okay.
Don't
Am
move.
I good?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, should I
This
read?
you're familiar with how it works in Hollywood. It doesn't matter what you see. Matters what the camera
True.
sees.
Oh, I see it now. Okay, great.
Before we read, this is Juliana, one of the protagonists. You're reading from her point of view. The book is divided into different sections from different points of view. I want to bring up one more slide that I prepared before we're reading. What I mentioned earlier, people walk all the time, and this is a quote here. If the camera could come in, Essie is the cop in the book. That's the only cop. This is another big theme. The cops do absolutely nothing except for this one. She cares and she solves the puzzle, but Essie walks. And here, let me read this. Essie doesn't like living so near her station. Better to bunk elsewhere so the work doesn't come home with you. But she needs to be close enough to bike or walk, which gives her a 3 mile radius around Southwest. That's the Southwest LA station. You learn things on foot. You see your beat better on a bike. You catch flack from perps, witnesses, and officers. Worse things have happened. And you said earlier also, you also walk. Yeah?
Yeah, I walk a ton.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, I would take like a 4 mile walk every day in my not so attractive neighborhood, and then once a week, I walked it 2 to 3 miles to dinner just to like see the neighborhood. If anyone's interested in walking in LA, there's a fantastic book called Sidewalking by a man named David Hewlin about walking in Los Angeles. It's fantastic.
You see, I'll
There are some
find
of
it.
us sidewalking. Yeah, it's really good.
Now, I'm going to find this and post it in a little bit. But now we're going to read from Juliana, who comes from a
Okay.
kind of a dysfunctional home. Anything we need
Yeah.
to have set up? I mean, again, I don't want to
No,
belabor the
we've
point
just
here.
met her we've just met her
Yeah,
in this. It's fine. Yeah, we don't know anything about her. You meet her before, but it's fine. No, nope. The whole point is the section can be read separately. Okay, should I just read it?
please go
Okay.
ahead.
Click. There's Kathy sitting on a dirty leather couch with the stuffing popping through. There she is, leaning back, arms thrust out like she's beckoning the world, turning that couch into her throne. There she is, 5 years younger, skin good, hair sleek, skirt so short you can quick glimpse her red thong. There she is, cigarette in one hand, glass of something, maybe Hennessy in the other. There she is, wildcat eyes, snake mouth. There she is, frozen in time, preserved perfect in 5 megapixels. It was Kathy the Raging Cajun who first took Juliana downtown and showed her the bars and illegal clubs just off Olympic, who introduced her to the man who said that Juliana was pretty enough to model, the man who promised he'd turn her into South LA's Cindy Crawford. He didn't know, and Juliana didn't tell him, she liked the other side of the camera. It was Kathy who helped Juliana get her first job, waiting tables at Sam's Hofbrau, which turned out not to be a beer hall, but a strip club. It was Kathy who encouraged Juliana to try out dancing, encouraged her to get on stage. Kathy, who turned Juliana into Jujubee. Jujubee is a nice name to say when you're high, nice to say quickly, nice to call out across a club, nice to let buzz around inside your head, nice to tell the guy who wants more than a lap dance. It's a nice name that allows you to escape who you really are, a name that allows you to do things that a Juliana wouldn't do. A few years after Juliana started dancing at Sam's, Kathy took a turn into a rougher line of work, tried her luck on the streets instead of the bars. She said she needed more cash for her habit, her kids, her brother locked up somewhere, and his kids. And she and Juliana went their separate ways. It's been 24 hours since the news rolled down Western that Kathy was dead up in an empty lot on 27th Place. Juliana had been getting ready for work at the Fast Rabbit when she got a call from Coco, who heard from Raina, who heard from Marisol, who'd heard from Sandra, whose mom worked at Moon Pie Pizza a block from 27th. So it had to be true. Kathy had her throat slit and was suffocated and tossed. The news was like a punch in the stomach, so hard and fast it knocked Juliana to the couch. More than a day later, she still hasn't left the apartment. She hasn't slept and it's coming up on evening again. It started as an informal wake for Kathy, a gathering of Coco and the rest of the girls who'd been taken down to the 77th the night Juliana wound up at Southwest and was surrendered to Dorian. And how the fuck Dorian had turned up at that particular moment is a mystery Juliana can't quite puzzle. The woman has a knack, she'll grant her that. The girls swarmed the apartment, where several of them crashed from time to time. They told Juliana since she'd escaped being locked up, the lay-low was on her. And in no time, Raquel was there with the goods. Then it was 2 a.m., then 4 a.m. Then most of the girls had gone home or gone to bed. Only Juliana stayed awake. The sun came up a lifetime ago, and now it's already sliding away. A whole day has unfurled on the TV. The wind started a fire up on Mulholland that is sweeping down the hills near the Cuenca Pass. People had to drive through a tunnel of fire on the 405 to get to work. The sky black with smoke, the hills lava red. The pictures on the TV looked like something from Mars, an alien invasion. Juliana thought she'd been tripping. At noon, Coco emerged from her room, her bleached hair wild around her heart-shaped face, making her look like a mama lion. When she saw Juliana sitting on the couch tearing up the last baggie, she made a tisk-tisk sound like the teacher at the Catholic school Juliana hadn't much cared for. Chica, you're taking it hard. When was the last time you even talked to Kathy? It had been a year at least, maybe more. But Juliana didn't tell Coco that. And she didn't tell her the real reason she was unwilling to lay off the shit and take something that would make passing out inevitable. She might not have actually seen Kathy's body, trash strewn and contorted, bloated and blue, but she couldn't shake the image. It would be there if she slept. It would be there no matter how long she stared at that tunnel of fire on the 405. But instead of coming clean about what was bugging her, she just asked Coco how much cash she had because she wanted to call Raquel to come back with more shit to get her through the night. Coco found some grubby 20s and told Juliana to tell Raquel to bring some Molly as well, because if she was going to work the back room at the Fast Rabbit, she sure as shit was going to get high, so it didn't half matter whose hands were where and what her mouth and the rest of her was doing that night. It's been a few hours since Raquel made the delivery, and all Juliana wants to do is get up, get clean, go anywhere else. But by early evening, she still can't move, pinned to the couch by Kathy's death. She yanks her purse open and digs out her cell phone again. The latest model, an indulgence way beyond the indulgences of the other girls. Each time a new phone comes out, Juliana finds the money. It's the camera that drives her. More pixels, more saturation, a more perfect eye on her imperfect world. She scrolls through her pictures, her long pink nail tap, tap, tapping against the glass. How many selfies you gotta take, the girls tease her. You think you're becoming an Instagram star? Think someone's gonna buy your low rent Maybelline? Juliana doesn't correct them. A while back, she figured out how to fake them and everyone else out. Pretend she was taking a picture of herself, but really turning the lens around, using the camera how it was meant to be, looking out, not in. It started as a slim rectangle to hide behind, but soon she began looking at the picture she was taking. Each night she examined the who, where, and why of the previous day. She used it to see behind the fronts the girls put up for one another, the rough talk, the layers of makeup. She's scrolling back the years, rewinding time, erasing lines and wrinkles, doing away with almost a decade of late nights, removing all the men who have left their marks. And she finds another one. Fucking Kathy. Because there she is again, this time sitting at one of the bright plastic tables at Chabalita Tacos, the 24-hour joint up over the 10 on Western. She's wearing a black cropped halter with three silver buttons. Her hair is bobbed and bleached and looking a little fried. Her head is tipped back so her mouth is in focus and her nose and eyes are slipping away. A gasp of smoke has just escaped her lips and hovers above her like a spirit. There's a man visible just over her left shoulder. He's looked up from his food, drawn by Kathy's laughter. Juliana swipes the screen again. There's another. This time Kathy's mostly turned away from the camera so that only the edge of the right side of her face is visible. She's either teasing the man or telling him off. Juliana can't remember. In fact, she can barely remember that night, what they were doing at Chabalita and what happened next. Fucking Kathy, she says again, the raging Cajun. Thank you.
And that's Ivy Pochoda reading from These Women. And this is Juliana, one of the protagonists, who is here recounting, and this is after one of her friends, one of the sex workers, has been murdered, and she lives in a house with some of the others, and she takes these pictures, and the pictures may contain stuff, they may not. The pictures play a very important role. Thank you, Ivy. You may now sit back down. This is sort of like I'm role playing a teacher here, I guess. Please take a seat. Thank you. Um, this is a wonderful excerpt showing this life, and I feel I'm belaboring this point, and you kind of answered that, but the opportunities of her, they just don't exist like they do for others. In this context, I have another excerpt here that I found really cool and very illustrative of this issue. Uh, Juliana again doesn't choose this life. The life kind of chooses her, being a dancer and doing making money as a prostitute and taking drugs. Um, Here is an excerpt, if the camera could zoom in. This is one of my favorite parts because one of the main protagonists, Dorian, who runs this fish shack and who's feeding the prostitutes, she goes to visit her daughter who has been murdered at Rosedale Cemetery, and there's another woman who is like a grave squatter, I guess. She is just there, and she just puts wreaths and flowers down on other people's graves. And a custodian says, "Hey, what are you doing? You can't do that." So let me just read this. The woman darts in front of the custodian, blocking his path. This is the woman speaking. "Are you telling me it's a crime to leave what I need on my daughter's grave? That seems more like sacrilege than criminal. I'm just doing what the Lord commands. I'm just honoring the dead." The custodian adjusts the objects in his arms, trying to get a better grip. "If your daughter was buried here, you could leave what you want, but what you're doing is vandalism. You can't just dump your stuff on someone else's plot." The woman says, "Now that too seems sacrilegious. Seems like a sin to tell me I can't honor the dead. What's more, I don't hear anyone complaining. Do you hear anyone complaining?" So she is there, and she's basically pretending that her daughter is buried here. There's another scene where she spray paints her daughter's name on a big sort of tombstone. I mean, this is just this a great illustration. I mean, is this something that you actually witnessed, or I mean, this shows everything. I mean, if you want to like really kind of pinpoint the issue of this neighborhood, this is, I think, the just an amazing scene. You know, some people have opportunities, others don't.
You know, I I know let's see. No, I didn't see it. I live by that cemetery, and I think I'd read something about the high cost of burial, like how much it costs and like how people especially people
The
from South
brilliant, the
Central LA
maintaining. Yeah.
couldn't yeah, you can't afford to like, it's one of these things that's again, stratified by class and you know, so yes, I think I'd read about someone doing something like this, but no, I haven't seen it. And I thought it would be a really good contrast too, because like I've always thought it's a little weird burial, like, visiting a gravestone or whatever. It is sort of immaterial. You can honor somebody anywhere. And that was sort of one of the points I was making too, is why like, how like so many parts of the world are cut off to people for reasons of money and,
Yes.
places of worship and places of, that should be accessible aren't, like, technically you're allowed to go into any church, but believe me, like, there are some churches that they're not going to allow certain people into.
Yep.
So, and this, I, there's an issue in LA about graveyards taking up like a lot of public property. So, and that's sort of another thing.
And these are not
This
city-owned
graveyard,
either, right? These are private
no,
places too, right?
they're private owned. This is a weird graveyard because it's back in the 20s and 30s, Black Black actors could not be buried in Hollywood forever. So there's a lot of Black actors in this graveyard cemetery. So it's an interesting place because it's pretty derelict now, but it's absolutely beautiful. Some parts of it, and it sort of represents like of the racist history of Los Angeles. And
Mhm.
now it's very expensive to be buried anywhere.
Now we have to wrap it up soon.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. Ivy's like, I
I
want
know,
to
and I'm
never
sad it
leave.
could. I know. I wish I could hear Meg, and I wanted to thank Meg for inviting me to do this. I'm so honored to be, but I know you invited me too, but
I'm not gonna quit just now, because I want you actually to ask Meg also something that you're burning to ask her. And the thing really is that Meg suggested, and I have to thank Meg as well because she initiated this contact. And I asked Meg, would you like to come back on maybe like a panel thing or with somebody else? And said, oh yeah, Ivy Pochoda. And I said, okay, I'll contact her. And so we have to thank Meg for initiating this contact and actually really
yeah,
suggesting us and putting it together. And I'm really, really psyched about this because I do want to expand the program to include sort of, go beyond uh, fiction, literary fiction, genre fiction, and involve and embed it in sort of the quote unquote real context. So that's great. Yeah.
I have a question for Meg. I'm currently reading The Trespassers. It arrived while I was traveling over the summer, and then I got back and I had to review two books. So I read We Are Here, but I am loving it. And I did have a question. The book that I'm writing now is about the current pandemic. What's it like having written a book about a pandemic that um, came out before yeah, it's so weird. Meg saying, I can imagine. I noticed that Lauren Bukes was on the Second Life too, and she'd also written a pandemic novel. Like, what's going on here? They said you caused it. I caused gentrification. You caused
Yeah, you caused
pandemics.
center exactly. And this is really interesting. Isn't there a movie that came out, or like one of the big super big time Hollywood mainstream guys? Didn't he make a movie that already came out about the pandemic? I mean, I'm just actually thinking, like, I mean, I
Oh, well, there's that guy who
what
made
was
movies
that?
during the pandemic. Doug Lyman made a movie during the. Is that the one?
Ah, no, no, no,
The
it's
guy that was
another
like the
one.
born. Oh,
No, no, that could
um,
no, it doesn't matter because I was running like who wants to see this, but on the other hand, Meg's book is absolutely awesome, and actually
it
reading this
is.
stuff
I'm
during
loving
the
it.
pandemic. But yeah, let's Meg. Oh, she sold the TV rights, but then a real pandemic hit. Oh, is that right? That's
That's too
hilarious.
bad.
Oh my God.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's funny. I was wondering, I sold the TV rights to Wonder Valley, which is set in Skid Row. It's set in Skid Row and at a commune. And I'm sure like it's the same thing with this book. They're like, well, this is great. Let's take out the Skid Row part. I'm like, no, 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 you can't do that. Like, that's half the book. It's like, we'll take out the pandemic part, we'll rewrite the pandemic. The screenwriter, Meg says the screenwriter made something beautiful, then reality kills it. But you know what? I think that there's
They
still
will come
hope
back.
because no one really likes reality. We'll just have this other pandemic story.
They undoubtedly they will come back. I mean, I don't work in that industry, but everybody who does knows and tells me that it takes forever. We had Joe Haldeman on here famously. He sold the rights to the Forever War before the book was published in 1974,
Oh.
and the movie is still not made. And if you actually Google it, you will see various articles around over like the last 20, 30 years of uh, super famous actors being attached to it and whatnot. So I don't want to like make you guys like feel bummed out about it, but actually I think that they would probably pick that stuff up pretty quickly. But Ivy, I mean, is that something that's actually would be and the audience, please hit me with questions as well. But the quick question, Ivy, can you divorce yourself from your baby, the book, even if they butcher it? Or would you
You mean
be
like for
completely
TV?
upset? Yeah, or for whatever other medium. If they, I mean, if they, I don't know, make it streamlined and more mainstream
Um,
compatible and
I go
put a
back
nice
and
bow
forth.
on it.
My husband's a TV writer, and he writes for TV, and I know how difficult it is that for anything ever to actually get made. So, when when Visitation Street was optioned, I was involved, and I hated every minute of it. It was like the most torturous thing in my entire life because I had to talk about this book like an outsider, and there's a
Hmm.
big issue about that book because the characters are diverse. It's about my neighborhood in Brooklyn, and people like when studios were challenging me, like, "How dare you write a book about a Lebanese bodega owner?" I'm like, "Well, this is really hard. I don't want to be involved because I feel like I have to defend my work in a way that I find really offensive,
Yeah,
and the way you, but you know, if they do whatever they do to it, the chances of anything happening and getting made are so slim that I don't really care. But if I wrote a book about Skid Row damn well better be in the movie. It's all I have to say. TV
right.
show, I have to say, yeah, it's just hard. So I'm not like living in LA, and a lot of my young writer friends they write and there's definitely a thought in the back of their mind, could this be a movie? I'm not like that. I write books. And like I don't care if it becomes a movie, it'd be very nice, but like or a TV show. It'd be fantastic. But at the end of the day, I'm here for on the page and they can do whatever they want to it as long as it's like the same like honest, message.
That's a really good attitude.
Yeah.
Your child has grown up and he has chosen
Yeah.
to get a, full-size tattoo of I don't know, the cover of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, whatever album. I'm just making stuff up. And you go like,
Oh
okay, I
God, no.
wouldn't have done it, but I accept it.
I love you. Yeah, I barely.
I still love you.
Keep that shirt on.
Keep the shit exactly. Um, yeah, I mean, folks, we have just a few more minutes, so please keep those questions or comments coming. If you had something put in there, just cut and paste it because the text rolls by really quickly. I guess my last question would be, I have many, many more, but the final question is maybe, what can we do in our daily lives? That's actually the question. Like, what would you suggest if we encounter a homeless person? Let me just volunteer what I do. I always say, how can I help you? What do you need? Can I bring you some food? Do you need a shower? And that's of course in agreement with my wife and well, my 18-year-old son is barely at home, so he would probably agree, like, it's fine if somebody, but nobody has ever taken me up on it, um in terms of of
Yeah,
of of
what
a
Meg
shower.
said here, be friendly, say hello, treat people like human beings, look them in the eye, unless someone is acting really um dangerous, sometimes those people don't really want to be seen or challenged, but I just try to treat everyone like there's no difference. Yeah, I mean there you
See, this
it
is the thing, somebody's posting, like somebody in psychosis. There's one guy who seems, he doesn't. he walks around all the time, and then I feel, I'm not afraid of him. I'm a man, and I'm well built. And he said, I'm not saying like I could knock somebody out if they probably not, but there's a guy who does not seem to want to be in a conversation. But I feel very strongly that I do want to help him. I want to come up to him and ask him, but then he seems just really shut up and just sits on the bench and walks around with his head down. And I don't know what to do with this guy. I feel like I really want to kind of take the initiative and just say, hey, dude, what can I do?
I mean, if he looks like he needs help, you can always figure out where the nearest social services office is, or I don't really know what the setup is there. Like, so like as Meg said here, if someone doesn't want to talk or is not in a state to talk, you don't want to invade their space. But like the other idea is, you know, like if people are asking for money or food, uh, or I often try to say, well, I could do this now, but like there's this place where you could actually go, and depending on where we are, try to give them information. You know Sometimes the idea of putting someone in a more constructive situation, but a lot of times there's not a lot you can do besides just like regarding someone as a human being, and that's sort of the best option,
Mm, mm.
I think.
Let's end it here. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you guys so much, and I'm so happy that we did it with a little bit of a delay. Lobby government for better housing. Yeah, walk and chew gum at the same time. Treat people as human, but also, do stuff that can be done within the system. Make
And
phone
if you have
calls and push.
socks, give homeless people socks.
Oh,
Foot health is really important because that's leads to a lot of sickness. If you have a lot of extra socks, it's a very small thing that you can do.
that's great. So actually, I could also, like with this guy, I could maybe just put when he's on the bench, I could just put a package of socks like right next to him and then take it or leave it kind of
hmm
situation, not even
He
say
might throw
anything
them
maybe.
out. He might yell at you, but
Right.
like it is something. And if also socks are something that shelters can use tons of
Mm.
sock donation. If people have like foot diseases, they won't be treated in hospitals. It's a very minor thing, but really, like there's a minor thing that anybody can do.
All right. Thank you so much, Ivy Pochoda. Thank you so much, Meg Mundell. This location here, the Second Life Book Club, will of course stick around, so you can come back anytime. Anybody can click
Great.
around, find more information about the authors, and hang out and talk about this. So the books here on the table. Shoot everybody to the respective website. This is a special show today, so I'm not gonna bore people with our credit slides. Just gonna mention Isabel, who does a wonderful job with camera. Mention Ruby, who built this set. She couldn't be with us because she's sleeping. Shyla does research. Thank you guys. There is a tip jar on the side here, the little sculpture, the little Draxtor Dragon. So please drop that in there. That's all for our volunteers. And if you want to get in touch, slbookclub@draxtor.com. Now, next week, we're back at the normal time, which is Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time, 12 o'clock Second Life time. And next week is an incredible show because we actually have a German author. Can you believe it? I contacted so many German authors, you won't believe it, and nobody got back to me. American authors get back to me, British authors from India, Sri Lanka, all over the world. They go, yeah, this is a cool concept. I want to do it. The Germans, nine. This is the first German author that I trapped. It helps that he lives very close to me in real life, but he's one of the top 10 German authors, best-selling authors. Tom Hillenbrand is going to be with us. He has a few books out in English. Most of them are not translated, but really cool stuff about technology, surveillance state, drone. How was it translated? Maybe drone state is, I think, the translation. So look him up. Good stuff. Thank you very much, and again, thank you, team. Thank you, audience. Thank you, authors. And I would say goodbye, and I guess we can cut